I will never forget the night the queen disappeared into the forest. We all saw her walk into the darkness, but only a few of us knew why. Most thought it was just another one of her evening strolls. But I knew better. I had seen her eyes before, glowing gold under the moonlight. That night, I saw them again, and I knew she was transforming. The Leopard Queen, our Queen Amma, was not like other rulers. She carried a secret known only to the elders and a few trusted maids like myself. By day, she was a wise and fair ruler, strong and just, but by night, when the moon rose high in the sky, she became something else. Her skin rippled and shifted, her body crouched low, and her eyes took on the piercing gaze of a predator. She became a leopard, a creature of the wild, bound by ancient magic that protected our kingdom. But one night, everything changed. It started when a stranger arrived in our village. He was from a land far away, with skin darker than ours and eyes that seemed to know too much. His name was Duro, and he came from a distant kingdom across the sea. He wasn't like the traders or travelers we usually saw. There was something different about him, something that made even the bravest warriors uneasy. I remember the first time I saw him, standing in the market, surrounded by people yet looking so alone. Queen Amma was curious about him, and curiosity is a dangerous thing. She invited him to the palace, asked him questions about his land, his people, and the seas he had crossed to reach us. He answered, but his eyes never left hers. He looked at her like he saw something no one else could. And, soon enough, we began to notice the queen spent more time with him. They would talk late into the night, long after the palace was quiet. At first, I thought it was harmless, but then I saw it, the way Duro looked at her. It wasn't just admiration or respect. It was something deeper, something that made me uneasy. The queen, who had always been so strong and untouchable, seemed different around him, softer, almost vulnerable. Then came the night when everything fell apart. The moon was full, brighter than it had been in weeks. It was on nights like these that the queen's transformation was strongest, when her connection to the leopard spirit was at its peak. I was standing guard outside the palace when I heard whispers, voices in the dark. I followed them, staying close to the shadows, and that's when I saw them, Queen Amma and Duro, standing together under the baobab tree. Duro was holding her hands, and the queen's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. I knew she was close to transforming, and yet she didn't pull away from him. He whispered something to her, something I couldn't hear, and her face softened. I didn't know what he had said, but it was enough for the queen to forget the moon, forget the magic that had protected our kingdom for generations. But then it happened. The transformation took hold of her, her body tensed, and her eyes blazed bright gold. She let go of Duro's hands and staggered back, her skin rippling as fur began to spread across her arms. Her teeth grew sharp, her muscles shifted, and in an instant, Queen Amma was no longer a woman but a magnificent leopard. She crouched low, growling softly, her eyes still fixed on Duro. But instead of fear, Duro looked at her with something else, understanding. I should have stepped in, should have called for help, but I was frozen, watching this strange moment unfold. Duro knelt before the leopard queen, unafraid, and whispered, I know your secret. The queen, now fully transformed, didn't attack him. She didn't flee into the forest as she always had before. She stood there, watching him, waiting. It was as if the bond between them was stronger than the magic that had ruled her life for so long. Over the next few days, things began to change in the village. The queen was restless. She spent more time away from the palace, and the whispers of her connection to Duro spread quickly. The elders were concerned. The magic of the leopard had kept our kingdom safe for generations. It protected the land, the people, and the animals. But now, with the queen distracted by her feelings for this man, the balance was shifting. The crops began to wither, the river ran lower than usual, and the animals grew restless. The elders called for a meeting, and I was there, standing quietly at the back. They spoke of the queen's duty to the kingdom and the danger of the bond she had formed with Duro. Some even suggested that Duro was sent by an enemy kingdom to weaken our queen. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The queen had fallen in love, and love has a way of complicating things. The elders decided that something had to be done. They demanded that the queen sever her ties with Duro and focus on her duty to the kingdom. But when they brought this to her, the queen refused. She stood tall, her golden eyes flashing with the power of the leopard spirit. "I will not abandon him," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "But I will not abandon my kingdom either." That night, the queen went to Duro, and I followed, hidden in the shadows. She told him what the elders had decided, that their love was threatening the balance of the kingdom. But Duro, calm as always, smiled and said, "Then let us find a new way." They stood beneath the baobab tree, the same place where I had seen them that first night, and together, they knelt before the ancient roots, placing their hands on the ground. The wind stirred, and the air grew heavy with a strange energy. I watched as the queen's eyes began to glow, but this time, Duro's eyes glowed too, pale, silver light shining from his gaze. The earth trembled beneath them, and a low growl filled the air, not from the queen but from the land itself. The trees swayed, and the ground seemed to pulse with life. I knew something was changing, something deeper than just the queen's love. When it was over, they stood hand in hand, both transformed but not in the way I had expected. The queen's power had grown, and Duro, too, seemed different. He was no longer just a man from a distant land. He had become part of the magic that flowed through our kingdom. In the days that followed, the crops began to flourish again. The river ran fuller than it had in years, and the animals were at peace. The queen and Duro ruled together, their bond not a weakness but a strength, a new kind of magic that blended the old ways with the new. And so, the leopard queen found a way to balance her love and her kingdom, and the land thrived once more. But I'll never forget that night, watching from the shadows, as the queen transformed not just into a leopard, but into something far more powerful, a ruler who could love and lead with equal strength.